All right, we are live. My name is Marco Stavro. I'm the CEO of Stavro Consulting, an organization that helps businesses better connect to Gen Z. I'm very privileged today to sit down with the one and only Michael Cowen. And he's based in Johannesburg, but yet runs a global business. And super excited to talk about AI. We know this is like the new big thing. So it'll be really cool to unpack strategies, what they're doing, how they're scaling their business, some leadership, some EQ stuff as well. So, Michael, welcome to the Gen Z 360 show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I think I'm the privileged
Awesome.
one to be here. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to this, man.
Why don't you just share? Yeah, go
sorry,
for it.
I was going to say I'm irritated with you because you're only giving us 15 minutes, man.
Well, I've put it as 20, but the 5 minutes is
okay.
So
okay, cool.
We'll leave 5 minutes for people to ask personalized questions.
Brilliant.
So
cool,
they
man.
don't get too bored. But why don't you just quickly share, who you are in an overview and what TerraFlow is about?
Cool. I never thought I'd be doing or running an AI business. I do have a background in marketing, actually. But I found it very, very boring. And I'm old enough to have got my first email address when I was working. A lot's changed since then. And the world of marketing also changed dramatically. And digital really changed marketing. I wound up at Deloitte Digital, and I was running that as the advisory director, and did a lot of work in Mindshare and a couple of others. And I wound up with two partners, and it's really good timing in terms of making AI work and the opportunities around AI. And we founded TerraFlow about 4 years ago, and it's just been an amazing success story. And it's sorry, there's a dog in the background here. Sorry, so I hope I'm coming through clear. So sorry. I was supposed to be in the office today, but I just never got there. It's just been one of those days. What we really do is, to put it into very simple terms, is we make all of the components around AI work. We fix the data, we optimize the machine learning, we do a lot of the hyperscaler work, which is Google Cloud, AWS, and we also do what we call AI UX, or UX in terms of how AI needs to work, because most applications don't actually have AI behind them. So really, we are the plumbers of the data world, and we're the plumbers of the AI world. And it's just got really exciting with generative AI. Lots of hype, but there's also some very real change in that as well. So that's a very, very brief background to how I got here, why I'm talking to you.
That's amazing. And the fact that you started 4 years ago is also just a testament to how far ahead you guys are, and also the foundation and bricks that you've already laid, so that now you can successfully actually execute. Because my big concern is that there's so many Bitcoin and AI and all the Web3 companies, but how many of them are actually getting results and executing for clients and adding value to the ecosystem is a different question.
No, totally. And this is where Simon Sinek and his why is a load of horseshit. It's great. We can have a purpose. Let's say it's making AI work, and, we can all create kumbaya around that. But it's not this defining purpose of kind of like saving the world from fossil fuels or whatever it is. I've kind of given you an explanation of what we do, but really how we do it is the critical thing. And I think it's what's often overlooked, certainly in the startup world, and how you actually deliver the value that you do. I mean, we call it our flojo. Our flojo is our mojo, and we have a lot of fun with this. But we've got a very decentralized business model. We've got rid of all of our managers. We've flipped HR. We've really disrupted how HR itself works. And what's interesting, a lot of our clients have the same skill sets as we do, but they don't know how to get the code into production or whatever it is. But it's our ability to understand this and work in a true agile way that's actually defined our success, as opposed to what we do and actually being in the AI space. What AI has given us is actually just a lot of white space in front of us. As a social media agency, as an example, it's a very, very competitive environment. We don't have that competition as such yet. I'm sure it'll come, but if we keep innovating, we'll stay ahead of the game.
Yeah. And what did ChatGPT do for your business, but also from for the world in terms of how come it got such great hype and so many businesses are using it?
I'm going to break this down into really simple terms, Marco, because I'm really untechnical. And I like to joke internally, I'm the most untechnical CEO of a global AI business. But if we just take the definition of AI, it means artificial intelligence. It's machines that are intelligent. If we take the subset of that, which is machine learning, it's really machines learning from data, machines learning from machines. Prin, my partner, who's our technical guy, will have a heart attack me saying this. But when we look at Chat GTP, it's generative AI. And the big difference, it's a subset of machine learning. What machine learning does very well is it predicts, is that a cat or is that a dog? And it learns from its own data. Now you've got generative AI, which actually can create the cat or the dog. Now, we've got to be very, very careful with the hype here. What's great about the hype is it's made AI a far more established concept. CEOs are taking AI a lot more seriously, and it's really accelerated the development of AI. And I think just as in digital transformation, when the internet and software really became mainstream, etc., marketing was one of the first things that got disrupted. And I think when we look at generative AI and the principle of creativity, or the ability to create, it can create content, it can create images, etc., etc. But the actual enterprise application of generative AI, it's still got a very long way to go. The data underneath is in a very bad environment. It's not properly optimized, etc., etc. So we've got to be careful. There's a lot of hype, but there's also a lot of opportunity. And I think what is probably the most important thing is it's moving at rapid, rapid speed. So we
Yeah.
look at this and we think, how do we leverage this? But also, let's not take our eye off the ball on what's not working today, because tomorrow it will be. And that's really where we're sitting. And it's a very, very exciting framework and context in terms of AI. And it really is a game changer.
Yeah.
As much as there's hype, it is a massive game changer.
How big is your team currently?
So we're about 45 people. And yeah, it's also changed how we recruit. But in terms of the chat GTP side of it, but we're about 45. Sorry, I'm sitting in my lounge chair. So if my screen moves, I apologize, guys.
No worries.
Yeah, so we're about 45 people. We're in the UK and South Africa. Um, we did lose Comer as a big client last year. I was just joking with you before we started. Don't bring it up. But, and I think if we hadn't have lost Comer as a client, we probably would have been closer to about 100 staff now.
Okay.
And I raise that because it's a very exciting space to be in. It
Yeah.
really is. And there's a lot happening.
Well, the fact that you guys bootstrapped to even this point with AI being so oversaturated, but yet you guys being so early is an incredible achievement. But I want to ask, how are you guys using it in your business? I mean, for other business, like let's say there's a bunch of CEOs listening right now, they've got a team of 50. How can they implement it practically in a simple way without expending huge overhead?
What, AI?
Yeah, just some ideas in terms of
No,
ways.
it's an expensive process,
Is
Marco.
it?
No, it really is. And I think the best way to explain this is to give context to the AI value chain. And
Yeah.
the best way to think about this, and it comes back to this principle of digital disruption, product market fit. Most organizations lose the value in the product market fit. And you look at digital transformation, Uber went in and digitized the product market fit of travel. That's all they actually really did. And they used digital to make it a more convenient factor. When we look at AI, you're looking at that construct. And you've got digital natives that want to actually really leverage AI and drive that forward. But the foundational work to actually making AI work is it's not a plug and play. You've got to sit
Okay.
down, you've got to understand your architectural framework, you've got to understand the reason why, you've got to design your frameworks very, very smartly. You've got to get your data modeling right, etc., etc. And it's really not a cheap process. And I mean, I had a mate who does some health work, and he wanted to analyze a whole lot of images. And, just to actually go through the training of the images in terms of the problem application, etc., you've got to go and train the models, and it's you got to put resource into it, you got to put computing power into it. So, and this is one of the barriers to AI, by the way, and this is also where we're seeing on the hype. It's not a cheap solution, but and you've got to really think about it in a very, very structured way, because to build a data engineering solution, to build the machine learning optimization, et cetera, you've got to have the right skill. So it's a combination of skill, it's a combination of really resourcing up and actually really developing the models. It's not simple. It's
And
really not
now,
as simple as it sounds.
with Standard Bank and Sanlam and Capitec, and I mean all these major corporations, how far are they on that AI journey? Like, have they really implemented using it, or how can you give us some insight into where companies are in terms of?
Yeah, look, every organization's in a very, very different stage. And ultimately, the first question you've got to understand is the maturity, or the really how poor their data structure is. Because the first step you've got to do is you've actually got to structure the data properly, because it's kind of like crap in, crap out. And you've got to fix the data, and that's really the baseline. So a lot of our work actually sits in the data engineering space, building data pipelines, building data lakes, etc. And some are far more ahead and a lot more sophisticated. But again, also, it's kind of like calories. Not all data is equal. Is it useful? What is the user case? And certainly, what's made us different is we break these down into a very, very, what we call thin slice consulting. And we would want to understand the user case before we try and fix all the data. Because if you understand what the use case is, you can work backwards in terms of understanding the underlying architecture, the modernization of that architecture, the upgrades, and also you get stuck in these terrible license agreements. So I'm not going to pretend, Marco, this is a very, very complex world behind the scenes, and some are really advanced. And I think also, to be honest, the larger the enterprise, the more complex it is, and the more siloed it becomes, the less advanced they are in certain areas, but in other areas they probably are more advanced. Whereas you get a mid-sized organization, they're probably a lot more advanced because they can talk to each other. They can get shit done a lot quicker.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, if you're listening to this, my name is Marco Stavro. This is the Gen Z 360 show. I'm here with Michael Cowen from TerraFlow. And if you've got any questions, we'll be answering them in approximately 7 minutes. So please share them in the chat. I see we've got already some comments. So please,
Cool.
anything about AI, leadership, and the future of technology. We're going to even get Michael to make a few predictions, which might favor in a few years' time. But thank you for joining in, and please share your questions now so that we know we can ask them at a later stage. Michael, moving into leadership, maybe, I don't know if you have any, but you have to maybe think about it. But what are some of the funniest experiences or stories you've had with having a global team and running 45 employees now? And then let's get strategies and frameworks around how you employ your staff and how you actually run your team.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of really funny stories, and we actually do have fun. I think culture ultimately is the secret sauce, and ultimately it's what my job is culture. And it's important that what you do brings fun, and I have a very clear understanding and resonance to this principle of meaning and purpose. And I think what's more important is that our teams find meaning and purpose in the micro moments, in the work that they do, because I do believe business is about value, the creation of value, not about profit. And I think if you can build an organization that is based on people and you put people first, which is a very strong principle to us. In fact, it's a foundational principle to us. People are able to step in and actually really enjoy their work. I'm not going to make decisions for them. And I mean, Marco, where are you going to live? Are you going to get married? Are you going to have a baby? Everyone makes big decisions. I'm not going to tell you what time to come to work. I really am not, because that's actually quite pathetic in my opinion. And I think people should be empowered. And this is why our structure is designed around the leadership principle, that leadership is about leading yourself, because we don't have managers in the business. You are responsible for your, well, let's reframe that. You are your responsibility rather than your position. And this is how we see everyone. And a lot of learning comes from the bottom up as opposed from the top down. I can give instructions, but people are not typically going to follow those instructions. And we want our staff to really take responsibility for where they are and where they want to go in their lives. And what we've done is we've created my HR strategy is actually almost the business strategy, because I've built this framework where we promise our staff to double their value in 2 years. But we've built a system that enables that person to develop themselves. And so
The
leadership
value
for
of
us,
them as an employee, as a person.
absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
We've got we've got what we've called the diamond matrix, which is a self-determined career path. And let me put it to you this way. Most organizations, you're going to have a performance management review. 12 months, boom, candidate A, candidate B. Candidate A smashes it, candidate B is lazy. So in 9 months, candidate A gets to the point that candidate B is going to get to in 15 months. On a performance review basis, you're going to penalize candidate A by giving them, say, a 2% increase and reward candidate B by giving them a 2% less, because they're not performing as well. And we're like, no, bullshit, man. You get to the point now, a point wherever it is in 9 months, you automatically go to the next level. So we've actually built this framework, and it's very much a development process. So it's up to you. The more you put into the system, the more the system will give back to you. And this is why we've got a Simone does all of our personal branding. She helps our staff actually develop themselves in the marketplace. So it's very much focused on how do you develop yourself to where you want to go? Because I go and sit and speak to my staff and I say, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? None of them know, but they're loving what they're doing now. And that's what's actually really important. You got to be present, and you've got to be looking at what you're doing now. And this is why I think futurists are quite dangerous to a large degree. So I'm going to be interested in what the trend questions you're going to ask me, because I haven't thought about it. But it's very much about taking responsibility for yourself. And this is also why we're a merit-based organization. You come on based on your skill, what you're capable of, our cultural alignment, because I make a promise to my clients that I'm going to solve their technical problems. And we've got to put the best possible candidates in there to solve that problem. But therein lies the opportunity. So it's a very symbiotic framework. And ultimately, what we're running here is a system as opposed to a machine that allows people to really develop. And yeah, it makes it a far more easier management framework. And I think for me, my definition of success is the day that I don't make a decision in the business, because the business itself can run itself. And the foundation is self-sustaining, self-correcting, and it makes it work. So I've got a very different point of view on leadership. I think it's something very
What are those
personal.
two cultural or systemic things that you've tried out that haven't worked very well? Like if you're currently now you've just employed
Mm.
you're an upcoming CEO, even let's say talking from a bigger corporate point of position. Now you suddenly have 25, 30, 40 people under you that you're now having to manage. Like, what are some of the things they shouldn't do?
You shouldn't manage them. And I'm being dead serious. You need to empower people to take responsibility. And by managing them, what you're actually doing is you're kind of saying to that individual, I'm employing you to go and do X, but I'm going to actually have the checker to make sure that you go and do X. And in a management, and again, this is a structural thing, Marco. You're asking quite complex questions here, and it's because in most organizations you've got a very structured hierarchy.
Yeah.
We're a very, very flat structure. The hierarchy still exists, but they're organic. And a management framework is very, very effective in a structured hierarchy. In an organic hierarchy like we are, in a decentralized swarm-based model, there's no management. And you really shouldn't be managing people and kind of box checking them. And again, we've put in the checks and balances so that we can make sure people are doing their work. It's very much a squad basis. And to give you an example of how we would apply this, leave. Now everyone's going to ask their manager for leave. And eventually, Prin, one of my co-founders, he says, Michael, I'm sick of it. I've got 30 guys asking me for leave. I don't even know what they're doing on the project. And I'm like, Prin, we're a swarm-based business, which means we work as teams. We learn from the bottom up. Just get the oak to ask his squad, can I go on leave or not? Because they know what they've got to do. They know what their work commitments are. They're the ones that actually need to say yes or no. And they work as a team. They work as a collaborative, and off they go. So it's really not about managing. It's really about respecting the human being, and building a people-centric business is ultimately the key to any business. It really actually is, because business is about people solving problems for other people. And if you approach it with that mindset, it doesn't matter what you do. If you approach it through that lens, it changes how you grow and develop the business. And you are going to make a lot of lessons. Sorry, a lot of mistakes. When we started, we were kind of very open, and some of the guys came in and they just took. And I'm like, no, wait a minute, you got to go do your job. And it's like, yeah, but you promised me this, 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 this. And I'm like, yeah, I did, but I also expect you to do your job. And we've had to refine how we apply certain things, because, guys do take advantage. There always are going to be those that take and those that give. And it's really, the lessons are multiple. And I think probably to really epitomize the principle of learning is, it's great to fail, and everyone talks about failure, but it's not about the failure. It's about the learning you get out of the failure. And if you don't learn the lesson, you've actually failed the test. And that for me is very, very critical. And that's the foundation to any agile business model, which is really what we do. Sorry, Mark, I'm rambling here.
No, you're not. Well, thank you for being so open about that. And I can definitely see you guys are, an outlier mentality in terms of your leadership, because most organizations definitely, even from an SME point of view, don't think like that. And I think from a long-term sustainability, a lot of what you're saying overlaps with what I teach in terms of sharing a roadmap and a succession plan, and making sure your employees feel like they can actually grow in the organization and change positions and value and skill set based first. So I think it's I can understand why the culture is thriving. And in terms of from a future proofing point of view, I definitely can see that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Just in terms of our last question before we go to the audience, let's maybe share a bit in terms of, you guys are now on the front foot of technology and AI. Where do you see some specifics in terms of the next 5 years? Let's look locally in South Africa and then abroad first. So locally in South Africa, where should people be looking to? Let's say you've got between like a bar or 10 bar, and you want to now invest in Web3 or AI. Where would you suggest people, or where do you see the AI technology going, so that they can consider investing?
It's not where AI is going. AI has been here a long time. And I think really it comes back to my initial definitions. It's got the ability to predict. It's got the ability to process large amounts of data. And then with generative AI, it's got the ability to kind of create. But I think the more important question is, today's solutions become tomorrow's problems. And this is a very, very important principle in systems thinking. So we fix the problem today, but it will become another problem tomorrow. And this is, you just look at the black taxi to the Uber scenario. And I don't want to make predictions of what's going to come tomorrow, because I really don't have a crystal ball. But I do think you've got to be looking at problems that interest you. If you are an entrepreneurial in nature, and I don't think it's an easy process, you've got to be understanding the problem. And you've got to be continually testing and understanding the problem that you're solving. And then you're using the technology to make people's lives simpler around that problem, resolve the issues in multiple different ways that you can. And it does become a really, really exciting opportunity. So it's a question of what is the problem you want to solve, and then how to use technology. And it's like marketing and brand building. A lot has changed in that space. but the foundational principles to branding are still just as consistent. You've got to be relevant to your target market, and you've got to be different to your competition. And the relevance is an emotional connection, and that the difference is kind of the logical reasoning connection. Those principles are not going to go away. And look at the world in this principle driven approach, and look at the problems you're solving and refine it, because there you're going to find the opportunities. I can't give you the crystal ball. I really can't. And Mark, just to really epitomize this, we didn't start this business with foresight. Everyone talks about this brilliant business that suddenly happens, or suddenly you hit the success. I can guarantee you it comes down to the right people, good timing with the right problem. And that's it's the life's a bit about luck, because I didn't plan this.
How much have you guys, from your initial problem that you were solving, like how far have you, would you say,
So I mean, I think of the business this way: we're still refining our MVP around our business model and how we solve our customers' problems. We're a services business. We're not a product business. And we're very, very close to really optimizing on that. We've worked out the model. We've really worked out, and certainly what we thought 4 years ago to where we are now, two different scenarios. We could never have painted it. We could never have predicted it, and we could never have planned for it. I can guarantee you that now. But what we have done is we've tested every single day. We've learned, and we've optimized, and we've refined. And it's got us to here.
Brilliant. And then lastly, quickly, maybe just one or two like podcasts or books, or where are you currently learning about just technology? What are your interests, or what are your favorite shows, learning materials?
It's quite diverse. I mean, I've got a very wide range of interests, and I think this is also part of making sure, if you're going to do something in the future, find someone who does it, who complements you, who's different to you. You know, Brett Prin and I, as three co-founders, have very, very different interests. And, you know, I have a deep interest in systems thinking, psychology, human performance, you know, and books that are really, really profound and have shifted my worldview. Margaret Weekly's Leadership in the New Science, absolutely mind-blowing book if you actually go and read and understand that. And it was well ahead of its time, and technology certainly enabled the principles she's talking about there from a leadership point of view. Incredible book. And ironically, an old book is Peter Singh's The Fifth Discipline, really looking at it's how to build a learning organization, which is becoming more and more relevant today because of the technology itself. So those are two books. Podcasts are quite varied.
Okay.
Yeah, they're quite varied, and I mean, I like Joe Rogan, but it's 3 hours. I like the AZ16s are also really good. But I read more than I actually listen. I learn more from reading actually than listening. I like to read rather than listen. Just to concentrate for 3 hours, I miss half of it. I'd rather take an article and work through it. So that's my preferred method of learning. And I do read. I read a lot. I really do.
Brilliant. Okay, we've got one question here. David says, hi, Marco and Marco, great conversation. Question for Marco, as you say, the progression of AI is accelerating and cost to move models to production is dropping. Do you think we'll get to a point where it could become affordable for companies to in-house their own data and cleaning model training? Example, what we've been seeing with open source models on Hugging Face or Meta open source.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and in fact, if I can find the article, I'll send it to you. The Basecamp team actually moved to AWS, and they've subsequently moved back to their own on-prem servers. But I think also what's changed on the on-prem server environment is the fact that you've got incredible capacity in the NVIDIA, these really powerful process units, which is what you need for AI. The problem, of course, is Moore's law and also the degradation of your own internal servers. For the most part, clearly you need to get into one of the hyperscalers. But yeah, again, there are organizations that are doing it in-house. It really does become it's a difficult question. You're kind of like asking me to compare AWS to GCP. Two very, very different platforms with different advantages and disadvantages. but it's relevant to you. And certainly if you're starting out, use the hyperscaler. It's probably going to be more efficient. And, I'm not allowed to say this because Google apparently says I'm not allowed to say it. We're one of their top partners, and the tools that they use on their products are available to you. And what Google has built are incredible tools on using AI, and in Google Cloud, they are available. And I think this is the critical thing here. If you're starting out, use these tools because they tried, they tested, and they've got the engineers that you can't buy. And they're giving you, it really is Moore's Law. They're giving it to you on rands on the cents. They really are, or cents on the rand, sorry.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing for that. We are out of time, but I always like to end with a Gen Z question. You've got an 18-year-old son and a 16-year-old son, so you know
Yes.
a lot about Gen Z, the good and the bad and the ugly. But how would you describe them in one word? And what's one thing that stands out to you about this generation?
I don't think a word is. I don't think I can. I don't think it's possible. I look. I'm amazed at my kids because I look at them and they just seem so much more advanced than when I was at school, and they seem to. I don't know. Maybe I was just such a reprobate, but they're a lot more diligent, and there certainly is on the one side there is a lot more application, and there's certainly a far more open-mindedness than certainly when I was at that age, an appreciation for things. But I do think it's also critical that, and I think there's this failing in the school system that they challenge their thinking, because I think at the end of the day, and I think probably the most important thing I've ever learned is there are two things you have control over: what you think and what you feel. Don't outsource those. Don't give those up. Use those. Those are your only tools that you've ultimately got in life. Only things you can control. Everything else happens to you. And I look at my boys, and they do use those very, very well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for coming on the Gen Z 63 show
No, it's a
and
pleasure.
sharing your insights. And can't wait to see where TerraFlow is in 5 years' time. Hopefully, you'll open around for me to get involved.
No, lovely.
Yeah, thank you for being here, and thank you for everyone for joining. Go check out terraflow.ai. And of course, this is a raw recording, so you guys will be able to go back and watch us anytime. My name is Marco Stavro, also known as the Gen Z Guy. And yeah, thanks for joining us.
Cool. No, it's an absolute pleasure. Are there any more questions? Because